Well, Aaron Rodgers has spoken about his future for this season, the future in the future, and a vote of confidence for some members of the team. We're going to discuss it right now here on Boy Green Daily. Let's roll.
Zoinks! It is unequivocally the Super Bowl for New York Jet fans.
Field Yates, baby. Field gosh darn Yates. Let's bring him on the show.
Come on, people. Aaron Rodgers is joining the show. What's up, Connor? But Trevor gosh darn Sycamore, baby, for me, personally, my favorite New York Jet of all time.
Wow, it's great to be on. What an intro that was right there.
Paul, nobody does an intro like you, man.
Paul, you give the best intro of literally any podcast that I've ever been.
I'm gonna lose my gosh darn bananas.
All right, good morning, you beautiful people out there. Welcome to Boy Green Daily, a daily New York Jets video show live every single friggin' day at 7:30 in the morning. We appreciate you joining us. Well, again, I'm Paul Austin Jr., a.k.a. Boy Green. We got a special guest joining us to dive through all the latest Aaron Rodgers comments, and boy, there were some ones that certainly raised some eyebrows, both in good ways and potentially bad ways. Without further ado, speaking of bad, Badlands, baby. Joe Caporoso, the co-host of that wonderful feed with podcast, the other guys, some trends being bucked and all kinds of other gizmos and gadgets. Let's get into it all with Joe Caporoso, the architect of it all, here on the program. Good morning, Joseph.
Good morning. Nobody does an intro like you, and I love that Badlands intro, shouting out the other shows we got cranking on the feed. It's great to be here, and what is yet another disappointing Jets December.
Ah, boy. It is one of those, but quickly, a quick plug for the people on Badlands. It's funny. I don't know if funny is the right word, but whatever the word is, like you and Connor are like, let's have a Badlands baby. And you have one little baby, and it's fine and dandy. And, I've only got one child so far, but all of a sudden, you guys got all Angelina Jolie, Brad Pitt on me. You adopted like 30 gosh darn children. You got friggin' shows coming up the wazoo, man. I mean, when does it end? Is it ever going to end? Or you just like, okay, here's another one. Let's keep feeding them masses. I mean, you people are crazy.
We're a little crazy. We've been doing this for a while now, and when I started doing Turn the Jets back in like 2011, I think we started. I was this will just be a few years, and here we are. It's almost 2024. We're still in the playoff drought. We're still cranking off new shows. I will say this for our Jets: they never give us a shortage of things to talk about. That's true, right? They keep us busy. You know that.
That's true. One thing I did not realize, though, it came out this week. So obviously, a lot of people have been reminiscing. Obviously, in the middle of this, 13-year playoff drought. I did not realize this. Maybe you know this, Joe. Brian Costello. His first year covering the Jets beat, apparently, as he said on his own podcast, The Gang's All Here, in 2011, March of 2011, is when he said, you know what? They gave me the job offer. Let's cover this hot, sexy Jets team. And so I'm not sure if it's all these Jet reasons we've been explaining and the reason why Badlands is originally here with the GM head coach not aligned. Maybe it's just Brian Costello's fault. Maybe it's a Kaz curse. And maybe he's the person we have to hit with a bunch of stones or something to finally end this thing.
I mean, poor Kaz. I mean, if the problem was that easy, we could hopefully, find him a job with a different team or something. But
yeah, that's true.
It's amazing. It really is. Sometimes when you take a step back from it, it's not just in the NFL. It's in the four major professional sports in the U.S. They have the record right now. I think the Sabres are right there, but that's way ahead of everybody else. And 5-6 years, I think, is one thing. It's such a parity-filled league. 13 years, we're studying something special here. This is really history being made. Morbid history, but it's history being made. And it's going to be fascinating to see how this offseason is handled because it's such a weird mix of timelines and situations. It's a very unconventional situation, especially compared to some other off seasons that they've had.
And you spoke about the mix, so let's get into that. So a big portion of this program in particular is going to be spent on the comments made by Aaron Rodgers on the Pat McAfee show on Tuesday. So let's go through all the layers here. First off, he confirms that that the magical 3-month, oh, will he, won't he, is he going to make history? That is dead. He is not going to be returning. He all but confirmed that coming up. And then Rich Cimini followed that up by saying he doesn't even believe Aaron Rodgers will even be activated from his 21-day practice window, which we should know later today when that becomes official. He just believes, hey, he already said that he's basically not coming back. Why waste the roster spot? Just, hey, put him on ice and worry about 2024. Is that just the decision that's the smartest decision here now with the Jets out of the playoffs? Because a lot of people still, even me, I'm going to be honest, I know it sounds crazy and dumb, but I went like, man, if you beat the Dolphins, we could make some magic happen. I was a little on it. I'm going to be honest.
I mean, look, if they beat the Dolphins, it's a little bit of a more interesting conversation. The risk always with the reward, the balance wasn't there. Unfortunately, it's for the best, I think, that he sits out the rest of this year, and it's truly 100% for OTAs and training camp. The Jets' real path to a playoff ended when they lost that Raiders game. I really think losing the back-to-back to the Chargers and the Raiders, getting those 2 AFC losses against 2 mediocre teams was just too much to overcome. And they had a nice dead cat bounce quarter against the Texans, but beyond that, it's been very grim. And look, at this point, to have Rodgers have some kind of setback would be demoralizing. They have enough other things to worry about and to fix in the offseason. So it was a fun story to follow, and I don't doubt he's going to be healthy and ready, not just for camp, but for OTAs. But for the best, I mean, him behind this offensive line against any defense, especially Cleveland's defense upcoming, not an equation that would have been fun for Jet fans.
That's the silver lining, though, to what you said. Again, would it have been cool for this improbable, unbelievable run? Of course. But the little silver lining I got is Aaron Rodgers said, in 3 or 4 weeks' time, saying this on Tuesday, I'm going to be 100%. So, again, that doesn't quite align, obviously, with the Jets' regular season games remaining. But the good news that I hear from that is, oh, great, he's going to be here at the beginning of the offseason. The Jets know who their quarterback is. It's not this guessing game where we're pretty sure, but other free agents have to guess whether or not they believe this report or that report. He's the guy. He's back, and we'll talk about how much longer he's going to play. He did make a comment on that. But just in general, he's going to be here at the beginning of the offseason. He's going to be here. He's hopefully going to be healthy if you believe his 100% report here in a handful of weeks for the full offseason training program. That could be enough to recruit free agents. That could be enough to kind of rally and know that he's there and have some sort of impact on all the guys as well. Am I making too much of that? Is that an important factoid? What do you make of that portion of the exam?
I mean, look, it certainly doesn't hurt, right? I mean, the Jets have not had true quarterback stability at the start of an offseason in a while, and they need all the help they can get when it comes to recruiting. They're going to come off, a pretty ugly season, right? They're going to be, 6-11, maybe 7-10, but probably 6-11. And to hopefully have Rodgers out there with whatever version of this regime is left, he's had more success than all those guys. So when you're trying to get Devontae Adams or Mike Evans or whoever else you need to try to recruit to this team, it certainly doesn't hurt to have Rodgers. The Jets signed this deal. They committed to this timeline. It's a 2, maybe 3-year window they have to win with Rodgers. So for better or worse, and unfortunately history would say probably for worse, they're going to be very all in on next year. But that's your best shot to seeing the Jets have winning football and anytime soon. So Rodgers being bought in, being healthy, being here, helping them recruit, that's not a bad thing at all. And I think it will make Garrett Wilson happy. I think it will make Breece Hall happy. And I think it will have a positive impact on the rest of these young guys on the roster who've had to deal with a very frustrating, difficult season.
All right. Again, we're speaking of Joe Caporoso, the handsome face of Badlands, the freshly shaved. I'm waiting for you to grab one of those burly beards, pull a Conklin or something.
I can't grow it like you. I can't grow it like you. If I could, I might. That doesn't come in the right way.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe in due time, some more TLC perhaps, or more just parenting in general. Maybe it will force it to come out, I guess, as we know, playing in those waters. All right. Let's get into the regime stuff, because I think when Aaron Rodgers initially went down, I think the general belief was everyone's getting a pass. Hey, Aaron Rodgers went down. You couldn't have possibly predicted that. And then things start happening during the season. They're like, oh boy, maybe they should. I don't know if everyone should get a pass. Maybe we should do something here. And now that Rodgers spoke on the Pat McAfee show, and he gave as strong of a vote of confidence as you possibly can for 3 specific individuals, General Manager Joe Douglas, Head Coach Robert Saleh, and Nathaniel Hackett. He gave unbelievable, unwavering public votes of confidence for each of those men. Does that officially kill any possibility, regardless of what happens with the season, based on him coming out and saying that? Because if he came out and say that as he did, and then Woody Johnson made any move, that would seem to publicly clash with Aaron Rodgers, who's the main character in this entire story, his words of what he wanted to do. Again, he said, we want to reload, not rebuild. And then he gave those vote of confidences. Does that officially kill the narrative that any of those major pieces could be gone this offseason?
I don't know if anything's 100%, but it's always been very likely these guys are all going to be back. Again, for better or worse. It's not surprising publicly Rodgers is going to back them. It's hard to see a scenario where he would be wishy-washy about them publicly, regardless of what's going to happen. But I think it's always been 75 to 100% that all three of them will be back. The biggest change you probably get is Hackett being demoted in some way and they get a different play caller. It's very hard to see in this current infrastructure them cleaning house with that timeline. Even if you could make a very fair case that, look, like Rodgers or no Rodgers, like Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh are winning. Just they've had enough time. They've shown they don't have the chops to do it. I don't think it's surprising that they're not going to make the changes. Woody Johnson, for all his faults and all the things he gets criticized about, the Jets are generally patient, right? They gave McCagnon basically 5 years. They gave Bowles 4 years. Tannenbaum was here, I think, for 6 or 7 years. Rex was here for 6 or 7 years. They generally like take their time with these things. And, Douglas will be at 100 games by the end of next year, which, for his record is like Matt Millen territory in terms of lack of success. So hopefully they can make the playoffs next year. And with Saleh, it's hard for Saleh because he's the guy on the sideline every week, right? He has to be the front man for the organization. And he's kind of carrying himself like a dead man walking a little bit. But I do think, all things considered, all three will be back, and we're going to have to see if they can find a way to win with that structure.
Joseph, on paper, what you say makes total sense to me. Nathaniel Hackett has been the architect of one of the worst offenses in NFL history. So, like, to potentially bring someone else in the room and hopefully kind of massage like a Nathaniel Hackett, he's the OC like he was in Green Bay, but the play caller was actually Matt LaFleur, the head coach. Like, in theory, that makes a lot of sense, but I wonder if that's actually possible because Aaron Rodgers would still be here. Hackett, in theory, in that scenario, would still be here. And then this weird extra guy would be in the room who I can't imagine is on the staff, which wouldn't give fans a lot of confidence if it was someone on the staff because where was that guy the entire time? So it's an outside guy who's coming in like a weird marriage counselor. We're like, oh, this is kind of weird. So is that possible? Like, where it couldn't just totally go off the rails, bringing this guy in to kind of, could rock the boat and everything just kind of implodes if you don't fully believe in the run it back buy-in?
Anything's possible with the Jets. They make some unconventional decisions all the time with their staff and organization. I would say at a minimum, like, can you upgrade Keith Carter and Todd Downing and like your positional coaches? Can you get some other fresh voices in the room at more traditional spots in a coaching staff? I just think top to bottom, Hackett, Downing, Carter, Embry, there's not a lot there to get excited about, unfortunately, from a player development perspective, from a game plan perspective. You got to bring a couple new people in for some of these roles, even though I know they just made changes after the LaFleur year. It seems inconceivable to not change anything on that offensive staff after a year when you've had so far, 10 offensive touchdowns in like 14 games. It's like I can't even keep track anymore how ridiculous it is at this point. Yeah. They've scored 1 or less touchdowns in 12 of their 14 games, which is just mind-blowing. So you got to make some kind of changes, beyond trying to make an ambitious trade for Devontae Adams. And, what is your fallback plan there? If that doesn't work out, to make sure that you actually have a proper receiver room. How do you get 2 new starting tackles? Because that looks like to be what you need. There's a lot of work to be done. Now, most of it is just on the offensive side of the ball, which is a good thing. You don't have to really worry about your defense or special teams, but they got some real work to do. And it is frustrating to say yet again, going into another Joe Douglas offseason, they need 2 or 3 new starters on the offensive line, which we've been saying every year for the last 5 or 6 years.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has. So let's end on a positive Aaron Rodgers note as we're putting that conversation to bed. Aaron Rodgers is asked by Darius Butler's on the show, the Pat McAfee show, and he says basically is 2024 going to be the last dance? Because that's been kind of a theme among Jet fans. We're saying like, man, the all-in year. Push all the chips, try it again and go for it. Is that like the swan song of Aaron Rodgers? And Aaron said, I don't think so. And as he kind of talked through it all the way, he said that he wanted to be with the Jets at least least 2 years, if not more, potentially. And he said he's just kind of flipped this whole narrative. He said initially a little bit younger in his career, when he was in his 30s, he looked at 40, he said, I'm going to be on a couch at 40. Now that he's at 40, he made these comments. He had a renewed passion for the game of football coming over to the Jets. First off, I don't know how that's possible as a Jets fan for that to be the case, but that's beautiful. It's inspiring in a lot of ways that's a thing there. But Aaron Rodgers saying that this year is a lost year. This does not count in his multi-year commitment to the New York Jets. So what do you make of that? Does that excite you? Does that rev the engine that in theory we could get this 4-time NFL MVP Aaron Rodgers for at least or at most, depending on how you perceive his comments, 2 more seasons, so 2024, 2025, with Aaron Rodgers at the helm, and you do what you're supposed to do, those are competitive situations that you're chasing the title, hopefully.
I think it's a positive thing, right? I mean, I don't have confidence that if he just plays one more year, like what are the Jets doing at quarterback in 25? So if you can get 2 more years, he gets 2 years with Garrett, he gets 2 years with Brees, he gets 2 years with Sauce, Jermaine Johnson, some of the other young guys on the team that are still, on those early contracts. Is it too ambitious to hope that he's going to be a productive starting quarterback, at 41 and 42? Really, Tom Brady's the only guy who's ever done that. Rodgers is a competitive guy, and I think medically he's done some pretty incredible things. And it's not surprising that someone as competitive as him and with an ego, not in a bad way, as him doesn't want his career to end the way it could if it just ended after this season. So, he was talking about 2 or 3 years when he first got traded here. Hopefully he could give them 2 full years of being like a real playoff team. The goal is to just get into the tournament, and then anything happens if certain things break right. And I think you feel better about the trade and committing yourself to this as a Jet fan if you're going to get 2 successful seasons. And I think a lot of it will depend on what happens next year, right? Worst case scenario is going to get hurt again, and that's probably it. Best case scenario, they win 10, 11 games, they get in the playoffs and make a little noise, and they're like, look, like, we're not far away. Let's do this one more time. So hopefully we get that, and we get a 2009, 2010 type scenario where they're right in the mix back-to-back years.
Good times. That would be nice.
Times.
Yeah. I didn't realize, I guess, in the times, I thought we were just going to the AFC Championship game every year. After that, I'm like, oh, this is phenomenal. I did not know at that time, like, hey, you better savor this, pal, because you're about to be in the longest drought in franchise history in terms of playofflessness. But that's neither here nor there. I ask you, though, with the Aaron Rodgers commitment for multiple years, as he did on the Pat McAfee show, does that change the drafting quarterback conversation? Because your buddy, your man, the guy that you lifted from the gutter and the shambles to the turn on the Jets, and you were the gardener that kind of grew this tree into the crazy thing that he is now with Connor gosh darn Rodgers. Speaking of all that gardening business, he planted the seed in my brain. I'm like, no, I don't want any of that top quarterback first round conversation. I've done enough of that. They planted the seed, and every Badlands episode every week, he's just watering it. He's coming over up, Paul. Let me just lift the hatch, boop, 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 and water it a little bit more. And I'm thinking. Like, now that Aaron Rodgers committed for multiple years, does that totally take that off the table if the Jets still find their way? Because right now I was looking at the tankathon stuff, and I know that's crazy, but with them eliminated from the playoffs, they could get realistically to the number 4 overall pick. That is totally within range, and who knows what can happen with the top picks in that draft. With Rodgers committing multiple years, would that be negligent to take a quarterback at that pick? Because in theory, that quarterback would never touch the field during this Rodgers run.
Look, I think if they were picking 1 or 2, it's a different conversation because of the gap between Williams and May and the next prospects. And not that there's not other good prospects who won't go in the first round. I always thought that it was an interesting thing to talk through. I just can't picture the Jets doing that. I think they are going to take a tackle or a receiver somewhere in that 4 to 9 range, depending on how these next few weeks go. Hopefully it's 4. They can get Marvin Harrison Jr. or Joe Alt.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody like that who could plug into a must-have position. I think the year after, it's an more interesting conversation. I would also still be looking on day 3. Take your swings on day 3 on development quarterbacks. Take a guy every year on day 2 or day 3 and hope that one of them actually clicks and could be something long-term. I mean, they weren't wrong in theory to take Gino and Hackenberg and Petty and Morgan on day 2. They were just the wrong guys at the time. That's not a crazy theory to have, though. So I hope they do take a guy on day 3 this year in a quarterback talented class, and then you see where you land in 2025. But it's something they should continue to monitor, although I expect this year, first-round pick, somewhere in the 4 to 9 range, and I think it's tackle or receiver, depending on how the board breaks, which is what we were talking about last year. Also, tackle or receiver, and they took an edge rusher, so you never know.
That's right. You could just be on the clock and then edge rusher again. Oh, well, okay. Well, we are stocked at that position for the next decade. Spectacular. So yeah, I guess we'll see. I guess you never know with the Jets, which keeps us employed and keeps the engine revving there. So let's get to it as a final nugget here. Jets play the Washington Commanders. Final home game of the year for the New York Jets, but the Aaron Rodgers dream is now dead. It's either going to be Trevor Siemian, who's fully healthy, or Zach Wilson, depending on the concussion protocol, how that continues to progress throughout the rest of the week. What's your prediction for this game of all this nonsensical? Who knows what the hell's going to be going on, and what a Christmas Eve treat for Jet fans right before the holidays.
It's going to be ugly, is what I would predict. I think Siemian probably starts. I have a hard time seeing Zach Wilson playing in this game, or really any more games this season.
Yeah.
Washington could score some points. They have a very bad defense. I think you'll probably see like a 17-14 type game. I mean, candidly, it's one of those games where I would not mind if the Jets lost at this point. Like it's better for draft position, and we're far enough away from it. I also think you're going to start seeing the Jets like starting to shut guys down. Like anyone who's got a borderline injury, I think you play it safe. Like I wouldn't mind if they shut Breece Hall down. Like there's no reason to put more tread on his tires now. So I think it'll be a weird game, an ugly game. I would think Washington probably wins a close one, and I think most Jet fans are relatively happy about that when it happens. Of course, now that I said that, the Jets will probably win 34-7, and they'll drop to picking 12th in the draft or something like that.
Yeah, right. Which, again, the massive implications here for the draft nerds in the room. Washington's at 4. Jets are at 6-7, depending on the outlet that you're looking at. And the Jets currently have the strength of schedule tiebreaker. So if Jets and Washington are tied, I know it will continue to adapt throughout the season. This is a big one because the Jets win would create a 2-game gap between them and Washington, and that's basically over with what would be 2 games left to go. However, Washington wins. All of a sudden, we're right there, and that is, like I said, that path to the number 4 overall pick. And all things considered, with thinking of next year and the year after is the all-in year, a few slots better in blue-chip player territory could be a dramatic difference for this Jets team. They really want to seize the day here. So nothing wrong with cheering for the Jets. And, Washington won. Damn, that's a shame. Real shame there. Could be.
Unfortunately, a habit Jet fans are too much used to doing at this time of the year, but we're going to have to do it over these next 3 weeks.
It seems like it. Joseph, thank you so much for joining us. And if there's anything we missed on the Badlands thing, anything else that we didn't plug that needs some proper plugging, especially as we're heading closer and closer to the off season.
Listen, no, it's just patreon.com/BadlandsTOJ. Daily podcasts, videos, articles. Hop into the Discord if you join the War Room tier. Connor and I'll be busy. We're always busy. We got a lot of fun stuff planned for the off season. We'll be doing some rewatchables. We'll be doing the draft guide. We'll be doing the free agency guide. Busy times at Badlands, and we appreciate everyone following and checking us out.
As Joe always says, this is their off season. This is it. This is the Super Bowl that we're all. Yeah, it's go time. That's it. All right, let's zip up the quarter zips. Let's get it ready. Here we go. Hopefully next year is different, but I guess we'll see. Well, thanks, Joe, and everybody for joining us here on Boy Green Daily. We'll see you